I never thought I'd find 8 complete strangers doing keg stands on my private dock when I arrived at my lake house that Friday afternoon. The smell of cheap beer and sunscreen hit me before I even parked my truck. A sunburned guy in a neon tank top stumbled over to me, red Solo cup in hand. He said with a slurred voice that his name was Todd and asked if I was the Airbnb guy. He said Karen told them this place was a rustic getaway with unlimited lake access. I stood there watching this stranger vomit on my $15,000 kayak and calmly pulled out my phone to call 911. My name is Robert Sullivan, and I bought my lake house in Pine Ridge Shores 3 years ago after retiring from my engineering firm. The community was supposed to be my escape from the chaos of city life. 25 lakefront properties, all governed by what seemed like a reasonable HOA with monthly fees of $300. The brochure promised peace, tranquility, and respectful neighbors who valued privacy. What it didn't mention was Patricia Garrison, the HOA president, who would eventually serve 15 years in federal prison for what she did to me and 12 other homeowners. Patricia had been running the Pine Ridge Shores HOA for 7 years when I moved in. She was 52 years old, divorced twice, and worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a dental office downtown. But her real passion was controlling every aspect of our small community. She carried a measuring tape everywhere she went, checking grass height to ensure it never exceeded 2.5 inches. She once fined my neighbor Harold $400 because his mailbox was painted eggshell white instead of the approved pearl white. Patricia had this uncanny ability to appear whenever someone was doing yard work, clipboard in hand, ready to document any potential violation. The trouble started 6 months after I moved in. First, it was a warning about my dock furniture not matching the approved color scheme. The chairs were forest green instead of hunter green, apparently, a grievous offense worthy of a formal citation. Then came complaints about my boat cover being the wrong shade of blue. She measured the distance between my decorative rocks and found them to be 3 inches too close together, violating Section 12.4 of the Landscaping Guidelines. Each violation came with increasingly aggressive notes, always signed with her signature purple pen. Things escalated when I challenged a $500 fine for having unauthorized bird feeders. I pointed out that the HOA bylaws said nothing about bird feeders, but Patricia insisted they fell under the category of unapproved wildlife attractants. When I refused to pay, she started her campaign of harassment. She would walk her Yorkshire Terrier past my house 6 times a day, taking photos of everything. She reported me to the county for imaginary code violations. She even called the health department, claiming I was dumping chemicals in the lake, which resulted in an embarrassing investigation that found nothing. The situation got stranger when I started traveling more for consulting work. I would leave for a week or 2 at a time, and when I returned, things were always slightly off. The spare key I kept hidden was sometimes in a different spot under the fake rock. My garbage cans would be moved. Once, I found wet footprints on my deck when I hadn't been home for 10 days and there had been no rain. I installed security cameras, but mysteriously, they would malfunction whenever something suspicious happened. Then came that Friday in August when I found Todd and his friends treating my property like their personal party venue. After the sheriff removed them, Todd showed me his booking confirmation on his phone. He had paid $350 for a full week's rental through a website called Lakeside Luxury Rentals. The listing showed photos of my house, my boat, my deck furniture, even the inside of my kitchen. The host was listed as PG Management LLC. My blood ran cold when I saw the contact email address because it used Patricia's initials. I spent the next 3 days investigating with the help of my lawyer friend, James Morrison. What we discovered was beyond shocking. Patricia had been running this scheme for over 2 years. She had created fake limited liability companies and was renting out homes of owners who traveled frequently or only used their lake houses seasonally. She specifically targeted properties of single men or elderly couples who were less likely to have unexpected visitors. Using her HOA president access to our personal information, she knew exactly when we were gone. She had copies of all our keys from the mandatory HOA key registry she implemented for emergency purposes. The evidence was overwhelming once we started digging. James found 47 different rental listings across 6 websites, all for properties in Pine Ridge Shores. Patricia was charging between $50 and $150 per night, depending on the property. She had made over $200,000 in 2 years, none of which she reported to the IRS. She even had the audacity to leave fake 5-star reviews for herself, praising the responsive host and immaculate properties. One review mentioned how nice Karen was when she personally showed them around the property, even though the owner was supposedly out of town. We contacted the other homeowners who had been targeted. Richard Blackwood, a 78-year-old widower, discovered that his house had been rented out 35 times while he was visiting his daughter in Oregon. The Hendersons found out their vacation home had hosted 3 bachelor parties and a wedding reception. Every victim had stories of mysterious fines, harassment, and that creeping feeling that someone had been in their homes. Patricia had been using her position to drive people away from their properties, making them easier targets for her rental scheme. The Sheriff's Department launched a full investigation with the State Attorney General's office. They executed a search warrant at Patricia's house and found detailed spreadsheets of every homeowner's travel schedule, copies of all our house keys labeled and organized, and $60,000 in cash hidden in her freezer. Her computer contained hundreds of email exchanges with renters, fake lease agreements, and even a business plan to expand her operation to neighboring communities. She had been planning to recruit other HOA presidents into her network. Patricia tried to cover her tracks when she realized we were on to her. She deleted the rental listings and attempted to destroy her computer's hard drive with a hammer. She called an emergency HOA meeting where she tried to convince everyone that I was a disgruntled troublemaker spreading lies about her. She even accused me of renting out my own house and trying to frame her for tax evasion. But by then, the police had already interviewed dozens of renters who identified her as the person who gave them keys and toured them through our properties. The arrest happened at the next HOA meeting. Patricia was in the middle of proposing new regulations about security cameras when federal agents walked in. She stood up and said with a shaking voice that this was private property and they had no right to be there. The lead agent calmly presented the warrant and informed her she was under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, tax evasion, and running an illegal rental operation. As they put the handcuffs on her, she screamed that she was trying to increase property values and that we were all ungrateful idiots who didn't deserve her leadership. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented mountains of evidence, including security footage from a gas station showing Patricia entering my house with cleaning supplies, testimony from 43 renters who had stayed in our homes, and financial records showing she had hidden the income through a complex web of shell companies. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she had verbal permission from homeowners but couldn't produce a single witness or document to support this claim. Patricia took the stand and insisted she was providing a community service by preventing our houses from sitting empty and attracting criminals. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They found Patricia guilty on all 27 counts, including wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, identity theft, and breaking and entering. Each count carried potential prison time, and the judge was not sympathetic to her claims of good intentions. During sentencing, 3 victims gave impact statements about the violation they felt knowing strangers had been in their homes, touching their belongings, sleeping in their beds. Richard Blackwood broke down crying when he described finding out that his late wife's jewelry box had been moved by renters.